Where'll you be going?
Texas?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Go on, make it happen.
And now here's Steve and Michelle.
Welcome from the heart of Dripping Springs. We are Mallet and Michelle, hosted by me, Michelle Lewis, and Steve Mallet.
Hey, Michelle.
I think I'm still giddy from Founders.
I'm still tired from Founders. I don't know how you get giddy and I get tired.
I get delirious. It's deliriously giddy.
It came off a crazy busy weekend, and then our week, it's Tuesday, and our week yesterday just went nuts and continued today. I don't see any slowdown any time in the future.
Today is Tuesday, right?
Yes, today is Tuesday. I know. I keep looking at the calendar.
For sure. Can you believe we are already in May?
I cannot believe it.
Goodness gracious.
Where has the time gone?
Where has it gone? I've been sitting behind this microphone. That's where it's gone, for sure. You know, somebody told me.
Managing our other two businesses.
Somebody said, you have a really active social life.
I don't know how you do that. I was so tired from Friday night at Founders Day, being in the parade and everything, and all those kids, give me a ball, with Anthony Hippolito. I went home, spending about an hour walking around after that, and I went home and I crashed.
And then what day was that? Friday. And then I left about 11 something, and then I came back and went to a crawfish boil, and then I left about, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock from Founders. Insane. I was tired. But you know what? I actually left early. It was early day for me. But on that note, we want to thank our sponsors, M. Elliott Studio,
Capital Farm Credit,
Mallet Integrity Team,
and Nomic Power Solutions.
I'm so glad you said Nomic Power Solutions, because I messed that up every time.
You know what? Last week I thought we need to spell that N-O-M-I-C.
No,
Nomic.
I spell it phonetically. Nomic.
Nomic.
Yeah, Nomic.
I think a lot of people would think Nomic, but it's Nomic. And our guest today is going to be Sarah Pevehouse.
Oh, you said it right.
I did, yes. That's a difficult one. But she's coming on. She's part of this new school setups called Apogee Strong. Tim Kennedy and what's his name? Matt Boudreau are setting this up, and I'm not quite sure what it is. It sounds like it's a high school with a education system with a little bit different bent than what we're used to seeing in the public, or a lot different bent than we're used to seeing in the public education system.
It's much needed, especially after walking Founders Day and going through the carnival and seeing all those kids. I wanted to give half those children whoopings.
Yeah, I know. Huh? Hey, Jen at Red Arena asked us to promote the 14th annual Red Day Roundup, Red Arena Roundup. So it's coming May 17th through 18th. It's from 4 to 7 p.m. on Friday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday. Free admissions. It's at the Red Arena off of Fitzhugh Road at 2435 West Fitzhugh Road. They're going to have a horse show. They're going to have all kinds of activities. There's going to be a barbecue lunch, silent auction, raffle. So go out there and support that great,
and they have the cutest little gift shop.
They do, yeah. And all of the kids that go there are the ones, and the adults actually are the ones that go there and set those or create those gifts and crafts. So
go support Red Arena. If you haven't, if you don't really know a lot about them, they have a wonderful website, but you can also go back to our episodes on our website, and you can listen to her.
Yeah, we have a whole episode about her journey to starting Red Arena.
And it is amazing.
Yeah. I have a quick story that I came across. Quick story real quick. TxDOT, and this is from KXAN, TxDOT is going to move some bats from underneath the bridges. You know, I-35 is getting redone.
Yes.
And so they're tearing down some of these bridges to make them wider. I think it's going to be 6 lanes in some places. But right now, there are thousands of bats that live under the bridges at Wells Branch Parkway and Howard Lane.
How do you move bats? You're like, here, kitty, kitty.
That's a great question, Michelle. Yeah. Actually, it doesn't say that in the story. They're going to tear down these bridges, and they're Brazilian free-tailed bats. They're going to move them to the Walnut Creek Bridge, which is a little bit further south between Tech Ridge Boulevard and Breaker Lane. And the way that you move bats, first of all, you have to set up a habitat for them.
Okay, a bat house?
It's a bat house. The ones, a badass bat house. But the ones that TxDOT has built, they look like they're about 6 feet by maybe 4 feet, and they hang between the bridges. So these are going to be temporary because the bats now are living actually in the concrete, the parts of the bridge.
Now, just to be clear, this is not the Congress Bridge.
No,
Okay.
no, Congress is not being
Okay.
destroyed. So what you do is you create a good habitat for the bats. Then you take guano. Do you know what guano
Poopy?
is? Bat poopy from the place where they currently roost, and you spread it around the place you want them to roost. And then you slowly close off the place where they have been roosting.
Yeah, because it says they return home.
They do, right. So you slowly start blocking off where they have less and less access, and they will go find a new home. I don't know exactly how they make them go to this place on Walnut
They're like
Walnut
squatters.
Creek. They are like squatters.
They're bat squatters.
Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty cool. Rather than, I think, 25 years ago, the TxDOT would have probably gone, there's bats in there. We'll just tear down the bridge. We don't care.
I actually saw where it said it's illegal bat colonies are protected by law and cannot be killed or relocated. But I'm assuming because they're doing this
TxDOT does what they want.
TxDOT ask the people on 290.
Yeah. Well, you might be able to see those new bat houses hanging there between the Walnut Creek Bridge. I'm not sure. I saw them that they were putting them out. It looked like you'd be able to see them. But
Hey, can we sell some people some bat houses
yeah, we could sell some bat houses, some badass bat houses
for the low price
Yeah.
of Steve, you like to run, right? I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, occasionally.
Are you running any marathons this year?
I already did one in February. I was thinking about doing one in California in December. Depends on how the rest of the year goes.
I was going to say it's not cold in California then, but
It is actually. One of the coldest marathons I ever did was there.
didn't you say that Holly qualified for the Boston?
For Boston, yeah.
So is she going to run it?
Yes, with a caveat. So her qualifying time is 3:55. She ran a 3:52 and some change. But every year, depending on how many people register in her age group, you have to have they call it the buffer.
Uh-huh.
And so some years it's been 2 minutes, some years it's been 2:45. If it's 2:30, I think she won't get in. If it's 2 minutes, she'll get in, but she's going to apply.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, I heard a story of a New York marathoner. His name was Nick. And last year in 2023, he ran the marathon and he had so much fun and he thought he would do it again in 2024. And he applied to run the marathon, and he gets a rejection.
This is New York.
This is New York for the 2024, and he gets a rejection letter, one of 160,000 applicants to not get into the race. But the best part of it was his face on the rejection letter. Running the 2023 marathon. They used his face to
send the rejection
letter. Yeah, and it's
letter?
a picture of him like biting on the medal or something like that, and and a thumbs up. So that's I thought it was really funny. But the New York Roadrunners have given him a guaranteed entry because they called him Negative Nick because they were like, oh, poor guy, he didn't get in. I mean, how sad is that? Like, let's say that you, I don't know, you had some big project at work and you didn't, you spearheaded it and then you get fired from this job and they use your face.
Look at our happy employees.
Yeah, so I was reading through some of the comments. It was actually kind of funny of people talking about instances like that. But this guy Nick, he's just going to run. I've asked you before about how you get to run in a marathon, but in the New York Marathon, so charities get guaranteed spots. And there's something called a 9+1. And so in the New York Roadrunner, you have to run 9 events and then you have to volunteer one.
Roman did that because
Really?
Roman, our friend Roman from Costco, he used to live in New York, and you do 9 of their running races, which you pay for, and then you volunteer at one of their events, and they let you pay to run it.
They let you pay.
They don't give you the free spot. They just let you get one of the spots.
Well, you can also qualify, like what you said, Holly is waiting for, and then with good times, obviously, and then there's the lottery system. But then there was the other thing. I didn't read anything about the New York where you can pay. to get in?
Yeah, most of the serious runners I know, that would be the last way they would go. Like if I was running along on the trail and I saw somebody wearing a Boston shirt, and I'm like, hey, you went to Boston, congratulations. And they went, yeah, I paid the $1,000 to get the free entry. I'd be like, oh.
Are they really going to rat themselves out? You're such a running snob.
I am a running snob.
I would never tell you if I ran them.
I would shame you forever, Michelle.
I wouldn't tell you. You know what? If I have $1,000 free dollars, I'm paying to run the Boston.
The thing about it is, the reason going to Boston is so prestigious is because all of the serious runners know how hard it is to get there. Like you know me, I'm 61 years old. The time that I have to run to qualify is 3:55. Probably have to run a 3:52 because there's actually a lot of guys.
Is that 3 weeks and 55 days? Because that's what I mean.
If you've never run a marathon, that may not sound that fast, but that's like an 8 something minute mile, 8:25, 8:30 minute mile for 26 miles. I think your average person listening now that's not a runner, go run around the track 4 times and see if you can do it in less than 8.5 minutes.
You know what? Hey, walk around Disney World with me. I did 10 miles a day at Disney World.
How many steps did you get at Disney World?
A lot. Yeah. I can't remember what it was. Whatever it is, it added up to 10 miles.
10
I don't know
miles.
what.
That's a lot of steps.
Every day.
That's probably around 20,000 steps because you got little itty bitty steps.
Yeah, I got little itty bitty steps.
I've got a story from Community Impact. Austin is looking to restart their $1,000 monthly payments to low income families. The Attorney General is going to fight that, and actually,
what's the argument for that? That's what I want to know. And
you want me to tell you why that's a good idea, or you want me to tell you why it's a bad idea? The idea is that there are people in Travis County, or actually the city of Austin.
Low income.
No, actually, I will tell you what the income requirements are.
Oh.
That are not getting by. They're not paying their rent. They're not paying their mortgage. They're living, sort of hand to mouth, check to check kind of thing. The requirements, so they're going to give it's a $1.2 million program.
This was like COVID money, right? Wasn't it? Isn't it leftover COVID money?
They used COVID to start something like this.
Okay.
And that's one of the justifications. It's like, hey, this has been done before. They're going to give the money. They're going to have private organizations oversee the distribution of the money. So these private organizations will go out. They're calling it a family stabilization grant program. 96 households will start receiving a $1,000 monthly check of taxpayer money. And this is the way that works. You own a house in the city of Austin. The city of Austin is going to take your property taxes and go give it to somebody else over here. They're not going to provide for roads and police and all that. They're going to take money and redistribute it to other people. It's actually against the Texas Constitution.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that. The biggest problem I have with this is that here are the requirements. You have to earn below 80% of the local median family income. Do you want to know what that is for a family of 4? $122,300. So you can qualify for this if your family of 4 brings in about $90,000 a year.
But you said there's only 96 people that they're giving this to. So how are they choosing the 96 people?
There's Up Together, and Austin's Equity Office will develop benchmarks to evaluate whether the program is a success. But that's the groups that are going to pick who gets the money.
Basically, they're picking the people they want to pick, and they have this pool of money that they're going to give to these people. That doesn't make, I don't know. I'm sorry. Making sense.
These are not people that are making $25,000 a year for a family of 4. It's $93,450, and you can get $12,000 a year from the city. The city will take money from one person or multiple other people and give it to these folks. I have a couple of problems with this. One is if you are letting first of all, the guidelines that they're going to use, you know that there are only certain types of people that follow this, that have certain political leanings and say the right things politically will get this money. If you're on Facebook and saying things that they don't agree with politically, you're not going to see a dime of that. And when you start taking money from the government like this with supposedly no strings attached, they own you.
Yeah.
They flat out own
Yeah.
you. You will do whatever they tell you to do to keep that money flowing in. And
I'm all about
I think
not
that's
doing
terrible for humanity.
what people tell me to do anymore. That's what I'm doing. If they tell me to do something, I am doing the opposite nowadays.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, so the Austin City Council also came out a couple weeks ago and said they're going to have a $3.8 million budget shortfall.
Oh, huh.
Yeah,
But let's
surprise.
just
I know where you can get a third of that, City Council.
let's just give some more money away.
Well, the shortfall is due to a stagnant sales tax revenue. So I'm just going to go out on a limb. I don't have any basis for this, but I'll bet you it's because there are less people coming to Austin now because the city council has made it dirtier and less safe and more crime ridden.
Hello, let's talk about the protests that are going on at a public university, the University of Texas. And now you and I had this discussion, I don't know if it was earlier this week or late last week, about the National Guard being called in by Governor Abbott, which I 100% approved of. You brought up Kent State back in the 60s. And what did I tell you today at lunch? We were talking about that.
Yeah.
That the difference is that those students at Kent State, they weren't paid. The difference now is the majority of these protesters, they are professional protesters. And it was uncovered that Open Society Foundation owned by, Alexander and George Soros and the Rockefeller brothers, that they are giving $2,700 to $3,600. And they're calling these people, to these protesters, they're calling them fellows. They're not calling them protesters. Yeah. They're getting... These people, if you look at these consistently across these colleges, they're getting free tents from Amazon. Somebody's buying them the tents, but they're all matching tents. They get free pizza, free coffee from not Starbucks.
Free
what
signs.
is it? They get free signs.
These are not people that are taking a Sharpie marker and making their own signs.
Oh, no.
These are
they already have shirts and everything.
Custom printed signs, shirts, yeah.
And I talked to, they said it was also a network of other nonprofits, and I'm sure they're funneling their money through there. I was talking to my daughter today, and she goes, my generation is full of a bunch of idiots. They don't know what they are even protesting for.
I just wrote that down, useful idiots.
Yeah. They're not even useful. They're just idiots.
If they were smart enough to have a conversation with somebody that's down there that has an opposing point of view, they could not articulate why they are standing there. It's such a complex situation over there in the Middle East with Israel and Gaza and Hamas and Palestine. And these simple platitudes, from the river to the sea. Okay, what does that look like? Yeah. Where do the Israelis go? It's not that simple. And these kids their parents have paid $100,000 for this education. They're not being educated. They're being indoctrinated. Oh, maybe not at UT, but they are definitely at Columbia.
I think there's certain aspect to that at UT, but I think it's so ironic when they're sitting on a public campus shouting "Death to America" while their student loans are getting canceled and they're there on a visa, or I'm taking a mixture of people and combining them all into one person, and it's like, oh, okay, then leave. If you don't like what the freedoms you have here in the States, if you don't like what Texas is doing, leave. Yeah, sorry, leave. I
wish it was that simple. I mean, if you believe that the country's going in the wrong direction, you should be able to peacefully protest. What these kids are doing is not that.
This is not. Yeah, I happen to agree. So there's your shortfall right there. Yeah. Let's talk on a happy note,
let's do something happy.
Yeah, Dripping Springs News. Oh, wait, there's some discourse over on in regards to the school board election right now. People are getting nasty, and like I say, vote your morals, vote your conscience. It is interesting how people just become vile on social media.
one of the reasons we started the podcast.
Absolutely.
It's hard to be vile to somebody when you've listened to what their life story's about.
Has anybody changed their mind from a Facebook post? You and I have talked about this.
Never, ever, ever.
But along with that, along with voting, the U.S. Supreme Court on April 22nd declined to consider a case challenging Texas's age-based restrictions by voting by mail. So under state law, most Texans must vote in person unless they are at least 65 years of age or can provide a valid reason of why they must vote by mail, such as a disability or illness, military, or my favorite is incarcerated. But this was they expanded the voting by mail program in 2020
during COVID.
The Texas Democratic Party filed a lawsuit requesting that all registered voters be allowed to vote by mail. Without an excuse.
We've talked about that. That's the number one way that there is voter fraud is through mail-in ballots. Well,
the 3 Texan voters that brought this suit, and it's kind of gone through the multi-layers of the judicial system, they argued that in December of 2023, that by expanding the mail-in voting, it would allow more young voters to participate in elections. But here's the reason why, and I love this because now we're talking about the protests and stuff. Young people can face substantial barriers when voting in person, including lack of transportation. Here's my favorite one. Long lines. Oh, yeah. Big, inability to find or access their polling place and limited time off from work. Well, that one is BS because Texas has a law that you get paid time off from work to vote during elections.
Those people think that the average person is an idiot that can't do anything for themselves. It's the same people that say voter ID is racist and stops people from voting. You can get like 20 different ID cards in the state of Texas that allow you to vote. There is no way that there's anything in place that's preventing people from voting because they don't have an ID card.
I know. I don't know. It's getting ridiculous. We've talked about it over and over again. This is a very important election.
One side is arguing for cheating in elections.
Well, here I'm going to give the other side. The Texas Democratic Party Chair Gilberto Hinojosa condemned the Supreme Court decision, and he said this decision means that the voices of young Texans will be continued to be suppressed. All young Texas voters can struggle physically accessing the polls for any number of reasons, which mail-in voting could cure if given the option. Okay, riddle me this, Batman. These young voters don't even know how to put a freaking stamp on an envelope. How the hell are they going to find a mailbox to put their mail-in vote?
Here's a message for the young Texans that are eligible to vote. It's not hard. It's not hard. Super easy. Yep. You can go down and most of the time here at these local elections, even during the presidential election, I think I waited 15, 20 minutes.
If you can go to Starbucks or you can drive to Freebirds.
Yeah, if you can wait 20 minutes in the line at Starbucks to get your dragon fruit mocha cappuccino.
Whatever. If you can get it, if you can find the bus to go to your protest for a school you don't even attend to, then you can vote.
You can vote.
Period.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't just vote for somebody just because they have a particular letter, because now you'll get with what we have the county clerk.
Yeah. Well, when we have Sarah come in here, one of the things I was going to ask her about is critical thinking, which I think is lacking.
It's a rarity.
I'm going to do this story real quick. We got 2 minutes. Did you hear about that phone that month or two ago, that Alaska Airlines flight where the fuselage, that door popped out, and this guy, it was at 16,000 feet. This guy's phone got sucked out with the door, and it was found in the grass next to the road in Portland, Oregon, and it still works.
That's pretty
Fell
funny.
16,000 feet.
That's pretty
The guy's
funny.
still using it.
I dropped my phone off. Okay, I'm going to tell on myself. I was sitting on the toilet and I dropped it on the tile and I cracked it.
Did it crack?
Well, I think it's the outside shell.
Oh, it's the little glass case. Well, so Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal, that made her want to do this test. And she dropped phones from 3 feet, 30 feet, and 300 feet to see what kind of damage they have. And from 3 feet, most of them survived. From 30 feet, they all got some damage. These all had cases on them. From 300 feet with an OtterBox case, one of those really good phones, if it landed on the grass, it survived. It got a little bit of damage. If it landed on the asphalt, without a case from 30 feet or 300 feet,
it's
destroyed.
Dead. Yeah.
If it landed from 300 feet with an OtterBox case, it received some damage, but still worked.
Maybe it just got a little wind under it. Just like whoop, 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 and laid down.
But all of the phones survived if they landed on grass. So what you need to do is plant some grass underneath your toilet. So next time you drop your phone, it'll land in the grass.
There
You'll
you
be
go.
all good. So.
Thank you. Life lessons from Steve Mallett, for sure.
Well, let's take a little break and get Sarah Pevehouse in here from Apogee Strong.
Are you tired of being left in the dark when the power goes out? Say goodbye to blackouts with Nomic Power Solutions.
As your full-service Generac dealer, they offer individually designed backup power solutions.
From start to finish, they've got you covered.
Nomic Power Solutions, keeping you powered up.
Call or text 512-387-4232 or visit nomicpower.com. Follow on Instagram at Nomic Power for updates.
Nomic Power Solutions. Protect your home, protect your family, stay ready. Proudly sponsored by
At Capital Farm Credit, they understand that owning land is more than just a transaction. It's a legacy, a future, and a place to call your own.
For generations, Capital Farm Credit has been the trusted lending partner for land loans, farmers, ranchers, and rural dreamers just like you.
Their personalized loan solutions cater to your unique needs, making the journey to land ownership smoother than ever.
Capital Farm Credit, your land, your legacy. Visit capitalfarmcredit.com or Mark Rutledge at 512-892-4425.
Capital Farm Credit, an equal credit housing lender.
Interior design should be an investment in your life and home. Let M. Elliott Studio transform your space, where interior design meets excellence in Central Texas.
Beyond just selecting colors and furnishings, team principal and owner, Montana Elliott, is a trained and licensed interior designer.
With her knowledge of architectural principles, building codes, space planning, and design theory, her team will work with you to understand your needs and lifestyle.
From concept to completion, M. Elliott Studio is committed to enhancing your space with a timeless and classic style.
Ready to redefine your space?
melliottstudio.com, 512-781-0224.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Mallett Integrity Team of real estate professionals. They are based in Dripping Springs and bring you over 45 years of combined experience helping people reach their hill country real estate dreams. When you want the best in town, call them at 512-829-2062 or look them up at mallettintegrityteam.com. And now, here's Steve and Michelle.
And we're back with Sarah Pevehouse. I did it.
You did.
Welcome to the show. It's a hard last name to pronounce.
It is.
I'd love to know the history behind that, but welcome to the show. How did you end up in Dripping Springs?
Well, this is actually our second time to live here. So the first time we were here was in 2018. My husband had just retired from the Marine Corps after 25 years, and he landed a job with the city of Dripping Springs. However, I had been seeking work for myself, and we had an agreement that since we'd been moving all around chasing his career for that period of time, we were, I think the overlap of his active duty and our marriage was like 12 years total. Okay. So this year's our 17th anniversary.
Okay.
So I think it was at that point, about 12 years. And so we said, okay, it's my turn. So I'd been putting my feelers out there, but he'd gotten this job offer first. So we came here. And we're just trying to figure it out. We were living in our RV, and and it was really hot. And our RV had a hard time keeping up with the air conditioning, and we were having a hard time finding affordable housing for ourselves. And so I ended up getting a job offer from a Waldorf school. That's my background in education is in Waldorf in Virginia. And so we took it. And he ended up giving his notice to the city, and we moved and bought a 10-acre farm and lived in Virginia. I was the enrollment director of a 40-year-old Waldorf school. Wow. And we loved it. We had a great time. But then COVID happened, and Virginia was no longer a very fun place to live. I lost my job, and we ended up homeschooling our girls through COVID. And then we knew just with the way things had changed, that we wouldn't stay there long term anymore.
Okay.
And so we started putting our feelers out of where we were going to go. And like I said, we were talking before we started recording, he's from Lubbock. So we were looking at coming back to Texas because his parents were just like, life is normal in Texas. You guys are experiencing something totally different than us. We were looking around Dallas-Fort Worth, to be honest, because we were looking for something that we thought was more affordable. And we got a call from the city. He got a call from his old boss. And they said, hey, if you're willing to come back to Texas, we think we have a position that might be a good fit for you. And we were like, we were just talking about, so we said, absolutely, yes. When do you want us there? And we came. And so I think this is almost 3 years now we've been back.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
When you just kind of went past the Virginia thing, were the lockdowns more extreme in Virginia than they were here in Texas?
Yeah, it was very similar to what California was doing. And a lot of people didn't really notice. I think we just didn't make the news very much. But our governor made it a misdemeanor to be in public without a mask on. We saw, my children and I, we saw people get into fistfights in Whole Foods, the police coming in and pulling people out of stores.
Oh my gosh.
It was really intense. All the parks were shut down. They had caution tape wrapped around everything. My husband actually was working for the University of Virginia at the time.
Okay.
And they had an anonymous reporting system set in place for all the students to report each other if they weren't getting their weekly COVID test. And on top of that, if they hadn't gone and gotten their, whatever the requirements were, it was testing and something else, they would get locked out of their dorm rooms.
Oh my gosh.
I would not survive there.
It was wild.
Petty tyrants just went insane, didn't they?
Yeah, I think the only thing they made the news for was the school board situation whenever they were not wanting parents to be allowed into the school board meetings. And then
I do remember
that state flipped from blue to red real quick after that.
Yeah.
But we'd already moved. We'd already left.
When you came back here to Dripping Springs, like when your parents said, oh, Texas is, we're open for business kind of thing. How was that for your children to come here where it just so free?
Yeah, great question. So I'll never forget that. We were on of course it took a couple of days, right, to drive here, but we got into town and we went straight over to the pizza place by HEB because that was where we used to like to go.
Yeah,
we
country.
We knew they had gluten-free pizza, the whole thing. And I'm no joke, my kids were like, oh, we can just walk in and sit wherever we want? And we said, yeah. And they go, they don't have any tables closed off because in Virginia they had every other table was, closed off or it was only outdoor seating, that kind of stuff. And I knew that they talked about it the whole time. And they were looking around, they're like, look, some people have masks on because they want to, but not because they have to. It was wild. So our oldest was in 6th grade and, it was ending of 5th grade. We moved here in the end of 5th grade and our youngest was in 2nd grade. So yeah, they were
scary time to be a kid, to be exposed to, because as an adult, I remember thinking, man, these people are really heavy handed, but to be a kid and have that's a really tough experience.
Do you think it changed the way your kids kind of saw the world coming from West Virginia and versus how they live now?
We had a lot of conversations at home, for sure. Like we were very candid and open with our children about what was going on because we felt like it was a good learning opportunity for us to talk about our values and, sovereignty to some extent, having choice in your life. And if you don't have choice over what's happening to your own body, you really don't have much freedom or choice. And so we really took the opportunity to try to have a balance. I mean, obviously our opinion was our opinion. Yeah. But we were trying to give them perspective of like, hey, let's not put people down because they're choosing to wear a mask because that is their choice.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah.
And let's do, we were trying to go about it, but we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. And here's why. Yeah. Because we don't think it's necessary to maintain our health that way.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But yeah, it was really interesting. And what's been hard is that we lost a lot of friends. So for people to literally say like, we don't feel safe. We know that you are not distancing from people. We know that you are not doing the things we're doing, all the things. And so that was the harder part, was them understanding that there were people who didn't want us in their lives anymore. What's
funny about that is I didn't lose the amount of friends. The mix of my friends changed because I identified other people that were feeling very similar to what I was feeling and believe what I believe. And so I became closer with those people. But yeah, I had some friends that were like, yeah, we're just not going to hang out with you right now because you're not towing the line.
Steve and I had some very, very interesting conversations during that time. And my son currently is in the military, and he was having, coworkers, friends, brothers that were losing their jobs. Over this. But to be a kid, to see it through the eyes of a child is so different than,
it's going to be interesting.
Especially working in a school. So I was the enrollment director. My kids were students at the school that I worked at, and to be kind of on the inside, so to speak, of hearing how the conversations were playing out in the faculty and the board of directors and everything was very interesting. And they just leaned very heavily into the local health department and decided to just follow all the advice, not question anything, and just make their own choices. I sort of brought a contrarian point of view, I think, but I was alone. I was a single voice trying to.
Is that one of the reasons you lost your job?
I lost my job because I didn't want to mask my kids, and I was willing to mask myself to keep my job. So initially when the board released their health policy for how to move forward, because if you remember, it happened in the middle of a school year,
March,
and everybody just went
That's
online.
right.
So we went online too, and then the summer happened. And then it was that next school year coming back when they released their policies of how things were going to go. And in the policy, there was this last little asterisk and a footnote that said, or you can have a doctor's note that will give you a waiver to not wear a mask at school. And at this time, it was not a big deal. I mean, it wasn't like a hot thing like it became. And so I sought out a local natural doctor and talked to him. My oldest daughter has asthma and my youngest daughter had sensory issues. She's actually, our youngest daughter's vaccine injured. And we have it documented. She has a waiver. She has a medical exemption to never be vaccinated again. But she has a lot of tactile sensory issues. It's kind of a lasting result from that. And so we went to this doctor and I just said, on top of me not agreeing with this in general, but here's two things I'm really concerned about. Is this enough to get us a waiver? And he said, absolutely, sure is. And at that point, like I said, it had not become a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we were just entering back into school. I took the waiver, turned it in, and immediately the school director said, we need to have a meeting. And so we met, my husband and I went and met with her, and she just really was trying to convince us not to do this. And she said, the thing is that you are a director in our school and you need to be following the guidelines.
You need to set the example from everybody else.
They knew the mask didn't do anything. It was the optics of that.
It was
situation.
really the optics at that point.
That was all that was.
And then I just said, look, you said here, we're following the rules. We're not breaking the rules. There was an option. I took that option. And she said, do you realize you're the only person in this entire community that's doing this?
Did you say, I don't care?
Honestly, I was shocked. I was really shocked because historically, Waldorf communities are kind of crunchy granola.
Yeah.
And I was so shocked that I'm like, really? Because I hadn't been talking to people about it too much, you know? And so we were just like, well, we're doing it, So we just moved forward with it. And she said, well, the board has put it out in the newsletter that we're going to review our policy every 30 days. So she said, we'll give it 30 days and see how it goes. So I still had to mask, though, to be in the office. And it was so crazy. I would sit in an office all alone all day, and I had to wear a mask because they said, I'm not joking, but you're breathing in there and your germs could be getting on stuff in the room, right?
And this wasn't like the middle of March when we all kind of weren't sure what was happening. This was
the following
August,
September.
That's
September.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
So a month went by, and how I learned that they were changing the policy, rewriting it, was I read it in the Friday newsletter that went out to the whole school. And so I sent her an email and I said, am I grandfathered in? Do we need to talk again? And she said, let's meet on Monday. And so I drafted my resignation over the weekend because I told my husband I know they took out the little asterisk that they rewrote it without that option for a mask exemption. And I learned later from my daughter's teacher, who I had a good relationship with, that there was one teacher. Well, there were multiple teachers that were upset about it, but there was one teacher who had threatened to quit if my children did not come in masks. And he was in his early 20s, but he lived with his grandfather. It was a multi-generational home. And so he'd been totally sold on this idea,
Sure,
right? That
sure.
he was going to bring something home and kill grandpa.
Yeah.
And so, so that ultimately was the result. They didn't want to lose a teacher because that is hard to replace, genuinely. And so we were just sort of the collateral damage in that situation.
Wow,
But you stood on your values.
Absolutely.
Right? You stood on your values. You did what was best for
we
your
discussed
children.
that at home for sure, that this is our opportunity to model for our children of the things that we believe in. And yes, I'm willing to lose my job for this. And you know what, we're going to homeschool. And it was actually a really great time.
Isn't it funny how these times of trial and tribulation can create some great things? So then you started homeschooling your kids, did you moved out here right when that happened, or shortly after?
No, we did that whole school year in Virginia, and it was the very end. I shouldn't say the whole school year. It was the very end. It was the last week of May. May 25th. Yeah, because we toured at that little co-op I was telling you about. And it was their last day of school, the day that we showed up to do our tour, like our tour, and our girls did a visit day. But we'd heard through some friends that we'd met here when we lived before that this little co-op had gotten started from a group of sort of rebel parents, that had left the Austin Waldorf School and started their own thing. So we showed up there the last day of their first school year. And it was a good fit. It was great. And we loved it. And so we enrolled there. And
so that co-op is... For those that don't know, it's homeschooling, but also some classroom work with other kids. Is that right?
This one, actually, they engaged hiring teachers for help pretty early on.
Okay.
But parents were highly involved. Some parents were even teachers. Some of them were assistants. Some of them did specialty classes. It was kind of a mix. And then now as they've developed, they've actually changed their whole model. They're a private membership association now with a full faculty and fully certified teachers and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But that's how it started, was definitely a parent-teacher collaboration on that program.
And the fortunate thing about Texas is that we are a very homeschool-friendly state, and there are states that are not, where you have to register and there's a huge oversight that you have to kind of follow different protocols. I mean, like within the public school system, you follow your TEKS and Texas educational knowledge and skills.
Yeah.
But within the homeschools, I mean, you definitely have a lot more freedom in that sense. And so these private schools, I know that a lot of people talk about accreditation versus not being accredited. Can you explain a little bit what that means?
So in Texas, we're really lucky. We've got a lot of freedom here with our education choices. They don't regulate homeschooling, and they also don't regulate private schools. So unless you want to seek accreditation, like what you just mentioned, so there's the TEA, which is the Texas Education Association.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if you don't seek accreditation, then you're just an independent education program. That's it. And, you can choose to follow the state standards if you want to create transcripts, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm for my high school program, I will create transcripts for my kids. And that means that I'm going to look at what Texas deems as required to check those boxes to say, yes, you're a high school graduate. And any homeschool parent can do that too, by the way. You can track what you're doing as credit hours and log it and create transcripts for your student. But if you want to seek accreditation, that means that you are affiliating yourself with an accrediting body. And I know a lot about this because at the school that I was working at, I was actually a member of the accrediting body for Waldorf schools.
Okay. So
I was the regional delegate in Virginia for our school. And basically you agree to however it is that they say this is what a school should be. So for Waldorf, it was very specific. And then of course for, I'm sure, TEA, they do have all their own stuff too of saying you will do these things. Even health policies. So I followed them when we first moved here. I was very curious about what TEA was doing. And they definitely had guidelines that they were pushing out to their member schools for opportunities. I don't know if they were mandates or not, but they were definitely like,
best practice.
But they weren't as restrictive as what you were coming from Virginia.
Right.
Yeah.
And so here's the real clutch for me, or I say the linchpin in the situation with accrediting stuff, is that once you sort of fasten yourself to this, if they make any broad sweeping changes, you either adopt those changes or you are no longer accredited by them.
Okay.
And so in Waldorf, not to get too controversial, but controversial is that they actually adopted the DEI stuff and the gender stuff and all of that. And they put it in. They said, hey, all of our member schools need to come out with a state. And you need to make a statement on this and all those kinds of things. And if you don't, then you're going to be in direct contradiction to what our member schools are required to do now.
And I think that's why there was a mass exodus from that particular school here in Austin as well.
Was that the Waldorf school?
The Waldorf school.
Was that across the country in Waldorf schools that happened? Okay.
Yeah, because that's OSNA. It's the North American thing.
Okay.
So they oversee everything that's happening in the United States.
Okay.
I do have a question in regards to high schoolers that are graduating these programs. Are they required, or is it a best practice to go back to that, to get their GED in order to obtain like a higher education or even like military service? Is that no?
No, they aren't. The thing is that they can. So what they can do is, as a parent, so as a homeschooler, you're tracking everything you need to do. There's different programs actually that you can pay, that you can log into, and you just put it all in and they make a beautiful spreadsheet for you and track it for you and all of that. And at the end, they certify your transcripts for you.
But there's certain colleges that won't take this, right? Unless you have.
So there's something that I've learned over the last year is that there are some colleges who have a separate track of applications for homeschoolers.
Oh, good. So they've gotten on board.
Yeah. So you're not in the competitive sort of wheel that everybody coming out of public schools is in. So they're not looking for the same things. You don't have to check the same boxes.
The same benchmarks and things like that. Okay.
Not every single college does that.
Okay.
But a lot of them do. You have to ask. The admissions department knows for sure. You just call and ask them. The other thing is that, I heard recently it changed because of all the AI technology that's happening, but they were moving towards more of like a portfolio-based thing, and you could written, so essays and things like that. But portfolio, I mean, there's a lot of kids that come and they have, like Waldorf school kids have portfolios. They don't, I mean, you can create a transcript, but a lot of their teacher reviews are narrative based. And so the teachers are writing out, the growth that they're seeing in the students and the areas where they're excelling and things like
Instead
that.
of just an 83.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the lower school, in the K through 8, they don't do grades. It's all narrative based. Now, I haven't never worked in a Waldorf high school, although my 15 years of experience was all in K through 8. So I can't speak for what the high schools do, but I know that you can get into colleges. They have college counselors that they hire to help you in the whole thing.
So tell us what you're doing now with Apogee.
Okay. So last year I was looking into what options that were available to me for my own child. So my oldest is going to be in 9th grade next year.
High schooler. Yeah.
So we're graduating the K through 8 world and moving into high school.
And
for
it's
the first
very
time.
hard to find the higher when you're getting up into the high school.
This type of school for high schoolers is rare, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of options. Even here in Dripping Springs, there's so many good options, K through 8.
Yes.
For, alternative everything. I mean, summer camps to just co-op stuff to, any of it. There's a lot of homeschoolers here too.
And then you become a 9th grader and things just kind of drop off.
It definitely dwindles your options. Yeah. Even I'm just now looking at summer camps for my daughter's 14 already. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to put you in because there's not a lot for 14. Usually the cutoff's like 12 or so.
That's where they volunteer at every vacation Bible school in Dripping Springs. That's what I made my kids
training. They start training in how to be a camp counselor.
Yeah.
They're not a camper anymore. Yeah. So I just was looking and, I'm a very principled person and our family values are really important to me. And I was looking at what program could I enroll my child in that I thought would genuinely prepare her for life outside of home. That was really the lens that I was using. And on top of that, so that's one criteria, right? Like what does the program encompass or entail? And then the other part of it was, am I going to have to compromise my values in any way just to get my kid a quote unquote education?
That's so refreshing just to hear somebody say that. You mean you're not sitting at Flores watching your kids jump around and on the playground and eating or drinking 4 margaritas?
No. And so I couldn't find both of those in one place. And so I told my daughter, I think we're going to homeschool. And she was like, she's so sanguine, and she's just such a social person. And I know this. And she's like, please, no, I really need to be with people. Yeah. I said, okay, let me figure this out. And so I started looking at, well, maybe I could invite other people to join us and just do like a pod or something like that. And then I was putting in a lot of effort into framing out I thought, if I'm going to just do this, then let me just dream it out, right? What would I really do for my child to get her prepared for life? What would I want that to look like? And it started getting really complex. And I thought, geez, if I'm going to put all this effort in, maybe I should consider, charging money. Like I'm going to invite people to join us, right? And then it just sort of grew from there. And I'll say, I feel like I was nudged outside of myself to do this, because I really resisted it for quite a while, but I kept getting this nudge of like, you should just start something. No, not me. Why me? Can't anyone else do this? And I kept getting it. And the moment that I surrendered to that, everything has worked out really, really well. And so I've just leaned into it, and I've had a really good time, and I'm having an even better time talking to other people about this and getting other people excited about what I'm working on. So that's sort of how it started.
Okay.
I was working on something all alone called Mission Heights Education. It's a nonprofit that I started because I was going to be renting space from a local church. And they just said, in order for us to get into a long-term agreement, taxes are a situation here. We're a nonprofit, and we need you to be one as well in order for us to do this as a long-term committed agreement. And so I looked into it, and it wasn't super complicated to do the easy form,
right? Because
it just requires you to stay under a certain amount that you're bringing in per year. And so that kind of got me in to that requirement, because I thought that was going to be just a barrier to entry. But then I was pleasantly surprised. I had a local lawyer help me with that, and got that taken care of. And then so now we've just been moving forward with the plan. And then I found another program who is in the process of launching schools with their framework and guidance, and we're very aligned with our values.
Okay.
And so that's
this
Apogee.
Is Apogee.
Yeah. And so Apogee originally started from two men, Matt Beaudreau and Tim Kennedy. Mm-hmm. Tim has a very interesting background as a special forces guy and MMA
fighter.
It's pretty amazing to hear his story.
And he's ripped.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a big dude. He's a big guy. And then Matt's background is really in all education, all different aspects, public school, private school, you name it. And then he got into Acton's, and he started launching Acton Academies. He's done a TED Talk, about what he views as sort of how can we reframe and rebuild education with just a different approach, And so what I like what they're doing is that they took this model. They had created a mentorship program for young men ages 12 to 22. And it was really kind of a hero's journey kind of a thing. And it was doing really, really well.
What was that called?
Apogee Strong.
Apogee Strong.
Is what that was called. Yeah.
And it was just for boys, just for men.
boys. Yeah. And they have it's a formatted program. So every month they're reading a book. There's maybe a challenge. They have a Zoom call. It's anyone in the U.S. can do it, maybe even outside the U.S. I haven't been a part of it because I'm not a boy.
But it's very leadership oriented.
Very leadership. Yeah. How do you become a man without having really strong male leadership in your life, right? And so they were trying to fill that gap and that need. And it was doing really well, and it grew really well.
There's a need for that in this country right now.
Yeah. And so then they decided, Tim's kids were getting older, and he wasn't, this is my understanding. So I'm just taking a little creative liberty here, but speaking for them, that he was not finding what he was hoping to find in education for his children, kind of like me. Mm-hmm. And so he said, Matt, your background's education. Can we start a school? What would I need to do? What would that need to look like? And I think originally they were looking at just launching another Acton. But what they felt Acton was missing was a strong focus on daily physical movement and activity. And the other part was family engagement, because they really feel strongly that this is a movement for parents, that they want Apogees to become education centers for the whole family. And so
that's great.
They launched a mentorship program for men and women. It's called Apogee Man and Apogee Woman.
Okay.
And next year, they're going to launch a young woman's program, just like what they did for the young boys.
Okay.
But it's just in the beginning. So their very first Apogee Woman program just launched in January. Because they were getting feedback from their parents like, hey, we want a tribe too. And so that's what they're looking at creating is really this network of people who learn together and are modeling self-development for their children. And so anyone now that I'm affiliated with Apogee, this is what really sold me on it, was that anyone who enrolls in my program, the mother and father automatically get enrolled into Apogee Man and Apogee Woman.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's not just for my program. So it's not just 10 parents together learning. It's all the Apogees across the U.S. are going to, and of course, it's not like you have to. I'm not going to check up on you and be like, hey, you didn't read your book this month. It's not that at all. It's just an opportunity if someone wants it.
Somebody wants to plug in, it's there. Yeah.
It seems like out of this whole COVID movement, there's just a group of parents and children that are just looking for a sense of belonging, a sense of being around people
and control.
Well, control of their own children's lives and stop having schools dictate what their children, I mean, they're not just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. Absolutely not. And, feeling safe in spaces. And how does your school model handle, or how does this Apogee model handle kids that are really outside of the box? Maybe kids that are special needs or on the spectrum. Or, with behavioral issues and things like that.
So that's really individualized to the person who's running the school. That's kind of just across the board for all small schools. I will say from being in small schools before, Waldorf schools, your budget is very limited because you're not receiving any state funding.
Sure.
And so it's a direct relationship between the people who are paying tuition and you paying your staff. And it is a luxury to have highly skilled people in specialties of any kind of learning differences. Now, I've seen it, some schools that I've worked at, teachers use their continuing education time in the summer to go and specialize themselves in Ortonham, or I think what's the dyslexia program? I can't remember. But anyway, some teachers would be like, you know what? I'm just seeing this come through my classroom. I want to go get specialized training. But then the problem is that they are the only one that has that training, right? So if you show up and you're like, well, I have a fourth grader who's dyslexic, and you're like, oh, darn, it's the fifth grade teacher that has that training, that child's not going to benefit from that. So that's just one aspect that the budget really determines the specialties that you can offer and the services. So public schools really got everybody beating that, right? They are a great place to go if you need services that are kind of for an outlier situation, or if the parent is really willing to pay for that service to happen outside of school, or maybe even have someone who can come in and visit the child in school, and then me as the owner would just create a class period where they can go do that, right? And they're not missing out on any core curriculum, but they get to go meet with their specialists. So that's a partnership between the parents. But most micro schools and small schools just don't have the budget to fund a special position, unless, like I was just saying, with the partnership with the parent. And then you can get really creative and work stuff out. I've met parents so far that say, you know what, my kid's been in whatever, a therapy or whatever.
Like Scottish Rite or whatever.
They know. They actually know, and they can tell you how they need their support. And so I just say, if you can help me help you, I'm totally willing to work with you. But I just am very open and honest and say, I'm not trained in any of these things to help children who may need something very special from me.
Well, you have to be your child's own advocate too, and you have to know what your kiddo needs. Yes. I learned that with my oldest. He has dyslexia and I have dyslexia. And so I kind of deep dived into that and became a dyslexic tutor.
Yeah, never trust Michelle when she tells you a phone number.
Ever. Also think twice when you see a price tag on MLS for sure. But I feel like I had to be my kid's own advocate. And that's why we left AISD and we came to Dripping Springs. But then there came a part in Logan's school age, I think it was like 8th grade, right before he went into high school. Because, they part of his 504 or whatever, they were pulling him out of class to take individual classes. And he said, Mom, I'm at a time now, like I know what I need to do. And it's more embarrassing for me to be pulled out of class to go take a test, now everybody's like, oh, he has dyslexia. And I kind of felt like he had like this little, bullseye or whatever on him. Like, oh, look at the special kid.
Well, I think that public schools did a little bit of a disservice to some kids when they did these integrated classrooms. Years ago, I was a substitute teacher in public schools when I was still in college. And so this is going to date me because I graduated. I mean, I went slow through college too because I was having a baby and we moved overseas and lived in Japan, and I graduated in Japan. But I graduated in 2011 from college, and I was subbing on base in the schools on base, and they are run exactly like public schools.
Sure.
They're just for the military kids in Japan.
I'm a graduate of those, by the way.
Okay. And so I subbed as a paraprofessional, which is basically
That's what I.
yeah. Okay.
That's what I am.
So you're in there, you're assisting the kids who need your help. And I never forget I didn't really know what a paraprofessional was the first time I did it, but I got a clipboard with a list of names and for the periods I was going to be in and everything. And the first time I was kind of just trying to watch like body language and are they on task, off task, all that. And there was a little boy I could tell was really struggling, and I went up and kneeled down by his desk and I'm like, "Hey buddy, do you need some help with your math?" And he goes, "Get away from me." And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, what?" And he's like, "Get away from me." Like he did not want my help because he didn't want he didn't want the kids in the class knowing that he needed help.
Oh, wow.
And what a disservice for that kid who he was just trying to just get by, man. He was just trying to get by. And actually that brings me to something I wanted to mention. Is that there's this book that got released in 2020 called Building Thinking Classrooms. And it really got overlooked because this guy did 15 years of research, released a book in 2020 about inside the classrooms. And then we went into a pandemic where everybody went to online learning. So the book kind of got overlooked until just about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And now it's picking up some steam. But I wanted to mention this because his research is really fascinating. So he went into 40 different classrooms in 40 different schools, and he would spend about a week in every classroom. So this took him considerable amount of time because he was a PhD student in Canada at the time. And so what he found was that a lot. I mean, just Google this book, Building Thinking Classrooms, and look at interviews with him if people who are listening want to follow up on this, because he's done some really great interviews and he explains in detail what he was doing. But the main finding that he had was that there was this widespread observation that he came to in watching these students, because you have to think he became kind of invisible in that week. He was just sitting in the back, right? So at the day one, he was, kids were like, "Who's this guy in the classroom?" By the end of the week, they didn't care anymore. Yeah. So he was able to make really great observations. And what he found was that there's virtually no thinking going on in classrooms. And he just said, this is a real problem. If kids are not being challenged to actually think. And what he found is he just called it
memorizing, basically.
He called it mimicking.
Okay.
So he said these kids are just developing really good skills at mimicking. And what they're doing is that this looks like these are just actions and responses that these kids think the teachers want, right? And what he found, so he mainly was focusing on mathematics at first. And then now he's expanded where he's written books to help generalized classroom settings. But originally he was looking into the mathematics issue of why are students not performing very well in math.
It's funny that you should say there's no thinking in classrooms, which is...
Well, so he said this,
there you
right?
go, title of the show.
And people were really like, wow, that's kind of harsh. And he's like, well, wait. He's like, there's a lot of activity happening. These are good teachers. They're working really, really hard.
Some of the most amazing people. I have a whole family of teachers. Yeah, but it's different. The education world is different.
So this is what he found is that he said they don't have to think, because what's happening is that the teacher is really just leading them through this lesson and they're just mimicking. So, if I put this number here and this number there, I cross multiply, I get my answer. I just keep doing that over and over again. And he said typically what would happen if the teacher gave them homework that maybe had a few problems on it that they didn't actually go over in class, what he would see is they'd come back the next day and go, I didn't finish it because you didn't show me how to do these.
Wow.
I could see that.
And so, and then he said there were like these 5 characteristics that he could see of how children were really just trying to like kill time. And so some of it was like,
That's
on task and off task.
That's so true.
And so he was saying some of this stuff was these kids they looked like they were on task, right? But they were doing permissible activities that, like sharpening your pencil or whatever. And then going to the bathroom. These are totally off task, permissible things, right? And then there's these on task activities, but these kids were faking it. So he said he literally watched one girl moving her pencil across the page, looking at the book, turning page, look at the whiteboard, like
She was
literally.
just
and he
making
said
it
he
up.
went over
She
and
was
looked,
acting.
and there was nothing on her page. She'd even picked up her eraser and erased stuff that
Did
wasn't
she
there.
look a little like me?
Michelle's in a book.
So he came up with this thing. Now, so I actually just shared this with a friend of mine who's a teacher, and she listened to this hour-long podcast that I'd sent her where he goes into all of these things. And here's what I came up with as a solution. Defronting the classrooms. So that means, and he said forever, we've been teaching for over 150 years and classrooms have always looked the same.
Lecturer up front.
Yeah, teachers
What
in
was
the
the
front.
word you said?
Defronting the classroom.
Defronting,
So he
okay.
says reorganizing the physical layout so that there's no clear front to the room, which encourages students to engage more equally and takes the focus off the teacher. So they're really engaged in whatever they're doing or with each other. And so, like, if you can see this video, like he has where, hey, have everybody stand up. Have everybody stand up and gather around while I explain something. And then what he also did was he started doing all these experiments with breaking kids up into groups. And what I noticed was that what he was modeling was actually, if you've ever gone to a professional development workshop as an adult, you do a lot of small group breakouts.
Yeah, you
and
do.
You stand
You sure
up a
do.
lot and you
So
move
that's how they're
around.
teaching the kids, but the teachers weren't teaching the kids. That's how they're teaching the teachers, but the teachers weren't.
Yes. So he was saying, hey, if we just make some of these randomly formed groups together, using vertical and not permanent surfaces to write on. So this is 15 years worth of research, and he really figured out these certain methods. So he said when he grouped kids in 5, there were only 2 voices really that were being heard. The other 3 were just passively experiencing the group. When he did groups of 2, they ran out of ideas really quickly. Their brain power just didn't go very far. And anyway, see all these different groupings, and they found 3 was like the magic number, because when you group 3, you hear 3 voices consistently the whole time.
Wow.
So are you mimicking this model into the school?
Yes.
That you are.
So
Is this now, before you, is this an Apogee model then, or is this going to be Sarah Pevehouse?
A hybrid.
No,
A
so
hybrid.
this is actually part of what Apogee recommends. Now, obviously, he's more prescriptive than what they are. So I was telling you before we started recording, Apogee's just an affiliation, and what they do is they give you access to a curriculum developer that they're working with.
Okay.
And she has given us all of our projects for the year. So that gives us themes to follow, right? So like, for example, a project theme for starting off the year together. So think we're forming a group for the first time. No one knows each other yet. We're just starting. And the theme is what's your code? And we're going to study like back in Knights of the Round Table, right? They had a code. And so we're going to look at historical perspectives on codes. And then we're going to look at current. Well, where do you see code showing up today? Do you have a code that you live by? How about your family? And then we're going to work through that. And I mean, it's a long drawn out process, but you're just guiding them through it. But you can it's an anchor. And then I can look at that through all different lenses to pull out from this theme of things that we can study and learn together.
You know, Steve,
I'm excited.
I know it sounds so much better. Remember when you were a kid and they would say, "What is your name, Steve?" Now think of something about yourself that starts with the letter S. And mine was always mouthy.
I don't remember that. I don't know what I would have come
But you know,
up with.
like introducing yourself on the first day, this sounds so much more interactive and just engaging.
I like this. I wish my kids had access to something like this when they were going through school. Honestly, it's very exciting. But so the kids are going to get a more. They're going to learn a lot more probably in a shorter period of time. Will you have a typical school day some days?
So here's the model that I was going to do in Apogee. I love this, that we were already in sync on so many things. So I didn't know there was a name for this, but it's called a 4+1 schedule.
Okay.
And so Monday through Thursday is when your core program is happening, and then Friday is an optional enrichment day. And so I was planning on doing that mainly because that's the co-op that we've been with these last couple of years, and a school that I worked for in California. They were just a 4-day-a-week program. There was no option to add on a Friday.
Okay.
But for me personally, and then what Apogee said, which is what I was thinking would work, is that if you create a space and it's a free day, you can have a lot of fun with that free day. So that could be, we could go on field trips on that day. We could have guest speakers come in. We could just do something specialized. Sure. And we could invite homeschoolers to come and participate too. So if you just call it a generalized enrichment day, and then you just plan it out so that people can sign up for it in advance, it also helps create some auxiliary funds for your program to invite other people in to get just a feeling it out. And my biggest thing is that I really want my program to be, I'm kind of using the word porous, but I want it to really be an integrated part of our local community. And so that's something that I haven't mentioned yet, but about the 3 themes that I'm using as I was developing this before I even got looped in with Apogee. And one of them was, so the first theme that I'm following and creating this is true life skills. And so I just think old school home economics plus financial literacy.
Oh,
Michelle and I talk about that all the time. It's like these kids spend 12 years in school, they can't balance a checking account.
Or they can't address an envelope.
Well, yeah, but exactly. Or they don't know basic how a credit card works.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's part of the program, and we're going to model it off of what the question I want to be able to answer consistently, and mainly because I have a 14-year-old myself, is why am I learning this and when will I ever use this?
Right.
And so I want to be able to answer that. I tried to channel my 14-year-old as best as I could.
I say that all the time to Steve. Why are you teaching me this?
How will I ever use this?
Can't you just do it, Steve?
Please. I'm going to propose Steve her 4+1 model, the 4 days of core work and the 1 day of enrichment.
Rough Friday fun day.
I think it is 4+1 now, but it's 4 days of you messing around and 1 day of work.
She hustles, man, that 1 day.
Yeah.
So my second theme that I follow in developing my program, which again, I love, surprisingly was aligned with Apogee already, is character development. And so I feel like the education world as a whole has gotten really myopic in focusing on what you're going to do and not who you're becoming in that process.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
Sarah, that's huge. It's probably, if you're putting in a nutshell where public school is failing, is in that. That's really.
Even when I called around some of the private schools, because I was really trying hard not to be the person that started something, to be honest. Immediately their pitch is like, oh, our kids have this much success rate going into college and all this. And I said, I actually don't care if my kid goes to college because it's her choice, not mine. And I really don't want to write that story for her, right? Like that's totally up to her. And the truth is I think that kids need to be presented with a buffet of options because that's actually how the world works, is that and I've reinvented myself so many times, right? Like I've owned a gym, I've been a personal trainer, I was a marathon runner, like I did all that. And then I've just transitioned, and a lot of my life has kind of changed over the course of where my kids were, because when you have babies, your life looks a lot different.
Sure.
And now that I have teens, I'm like, wow, I can date my husband again. I can stay home.
Oh, wait until empty nest hitting. That's where I'm at.
You guys will look at each other and go, who are you?
Right, totally. And then that third theme that I'm following as I've developed this program, this is the part that's been really fun to talk to people about, is mentorship, but that the transition point is into internships. So what I'm looking at is in grades 9 and 10, when I have a student who I'm working with and I say, okay, what are you interested in? What do you think you want to do? Because it is still relevant, right? Yeah. But it's just not the only thing I want to focus on. And they say, okay, well, like my daughter, for example, wants to be an author and an illustrator. So I want to connect her with a mentor immediately, right? Because I also feel like even as adults, we can get really caught up in glamorizing and romanticizing a career choice or a job. But when you actually learn how the sausage is made, sometimes it's not quite what you thought.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
the fact that she said that. Yep, the sausage.
We say that all the time.
That's my husband's favorite. I actually prefer to say the peek behind the curtain, but he gets, you pick up things people say. He says how the sausage is made.
That's the way I was. I was like, who's Oz? And Steve's like, sausage.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But both illustrate the same point, right? Is that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I had a great conversation with a friend of mine who actually runs schools. And he said, when I was growing up, I lived on a farm. And I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I was actually good with all the gruesome stuff because I saw that on the farm, right? And I said, I always thought I always thought that kids who want to be veterinarians just love animals, right? Yeah. But they wouldn't be able to handle the gruesome thing. And he goes, well, actually, I was coming into it from a different perspective because I'd already saw all that or seen all that. And so he said his thing was that when he did get to connect with a mentor, what he wasn't prepared for was the monotony of the work. Oh. And he's like, it's so dang boring. Yeah. It's like kind of like baby well visits, but just these general like care appointments for pets over and over and over. And he had no idea that was a part of it. So for him, he said that was kind of a deal breaker for me. I realized that I couldn't do that as my daily like career. And so anyway, that's my point, is getting them connected with a mentor who can say, this is actually what the day-to-day looks like of doing this job. And here's how I got there. So I didn't know, when I graduated college and I thought I'm going to be a guidance counselor, and I went down to the middle school where I had been subbing and stuff. And I met with the guidance counselor. Like, okay, how can I do what you do? And she goes, well, you got to go back to college because you only have a bachelor's. And I go, no, I just spent, forever, what felt like forever, getting a 4-year degree. I'm ready to do something. And she goes, well, you certainly won't be a guidance counselor without a master's. And so I said, I'm going to figure something else out, because to me, I was like, done.
Yeah.
And we had a 1-year-old baby, and I'm like, no, I don't want to go back to college. And so I wish I could have had a sit down with someone before, instead of coming out with that idea.
I think that's huge. I think there's a lot of kids that they get out in the workplace and they feel let down because nobody's ever explained to them how life really works. Like, we sell real estate, 70% of the time we absolutely love it. 30% of the time we hate it. And it's probably like, some mix of that for almost any job. I don't believe there's any jobs out there where somebody goes to work every day and goes, I'm living my dream. This is the job I've always wanted. So they have to be exposed to that, to learn that that's life. That's how life goes. It's not going to be great every day.
Do you remember when we were at the high school, we did that like walkthrough tour, and they were talking about the medical side of it? And I brought something up. I was like, so do you let anybody into these clubs? And they said, well, yes. And I said, well, actually, my son, he tried to get into it and they wouldn't let him get into it for one reason or the other. He didn't score high enough on something. And I said, he's a rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard, and now he's going to med school. So thanks for not letting him in, because I think that probably proved to him that he could do it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is last year in November, I actually created a community survey all around education, and I put it out to as many people as I could. And I don't know a ton of people here, only been here a couple of years. So I ended up getting about 30 people to take my survey. It was enough, though, to see certain things float to the top with the way people were answering the questions. And so I wanted to mention it here because recently this kind of dovetails really well with the DSISD community response survey that they release. So in my survey, I asked people a whole host of questions. 70% of the people who took my survey were female. So I just want to mention that. And 54% of them were in the age range between 40 and 49.
Okay.
36% said that they felt that soft skills were equally important to hard skills. And so just for anybody who's not sure what the difference, the soft skills are like problem solving, teamwork, critical thinking. Hard skills are basically skills gained through specific training and knowledge gained, data, project management, things like that.
So what were the percentages again? 36 and...
So 36% said that they felt that both skills were equally important. Because I'd asked, what do you think is more important, or do you think they're equal? And so 36% of the people said that they thought it was just the same, that you need both, equally. And so I also asked them what challenges they face when hiring recent high school graduates.
That's a great one.
And this was a write-in. I let them write it in. And this person wrote, their inability to communicate professionally, poor verbal and written communication skills, misunderstanding of office attire, punctuality, inability to disconnect while at work, and they put in parentheses, chat groups, social communications, TikTok.
Wow.
The next person wrote, they often don't have the perseverance to work through multiple solutions for one problem. And then the next one that was really notable was the lack of confidence to take initiative, lack of leadership skills, and too much waiting to be told what to do rather than problem solving, which I was really struck with that, because then when you look at the DSISD community response survey, when you look at people, so there was a portion of that where people get to write things in too. And this was their highest hopes area. So the highest hopes for their students. And this person, so people had written in there that they would be confident in their ability to solve problems with innovative solutions, cultivate individual strengths and passions, have choices in post-graduation plans and career paths, and be well-rounded in academic preparation, technical skills, and interpersonal skills.
Doesn't that kind of go back to what you were saying earlier about students just mimicking the teacher versus thinking on their own?
I think so. I really think
these
those
kids are looking for this. They want this.
But they're not. Here's the thing. What's being modeled to them are not the skills that are going to actually make them successful.
What's being modeled to them in public schools.
That's what I mean. Yeah, because, and like I was saying, the teachers are hardworking. They're following what they need to follow, right? Like there's some that have so much heart and passion in what they're doing, and they're trying really hard to be creative. But the truth is there's a certain aspect to the model that is inflexible. And so that's where I think these smaller programs are really excelling, is that we are highly flexible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing that's missing in public school all the way up to the college level is teaching critical thinking now. Mm-hmm. Instead of you have these kids that are just regurgitating basically what, like you said, they're just, somebody told them, they put it in, and then when the situation comes up, they regurgitate it instead of saying, okay, here's this information, let me kick that around, I'll add this other information over here, and then come up with an opinion, or at least trying to get to the facts of something. I think that's what's missing the most. So how's your school going to do that differently?
Well, they're going to have to think through things. They're going to have to engage, be highly engaged. And so, like with math, so this is I always have fun talking about math. It's not my strong suit.
Sure.
But it's because that's a story that was cultivated for me as a result of being in public school and having, I didn't do well at the expectations of that math program. But
I could teach your math class.
You could teach.
No, you could not.
There was a comment about the number reversal and all of that.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, dig even deeper into that. So then you lost a little bit of confidence in yourself because this formulaic math class that you didn't do well in, but you would excel at so many things in life. But your confidence was damaged by that.
100%. The story that I tell myself is that I'm not good at math.
Right.
But the interesting thing is that if you ask anyone who's worked with me, I love data. I actually love numbers.
Yeah.
And I love to budget. I love to do our home finances. So I still actually struggle with this a little bit. Like, well, actually, I think I'm not good at certain math.
Right.
But I think I'm actually good with numbers because I do understand how to analyze data and how to look for trends that are showing up in data and how, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's, you mentioned marathon running. That would be like a guy that trains for 10 years to run the 100-yard dash, and then somebody saying, okay, well, Saturday you're doing a marathon.
Yeah, so he's trained his fast twitch muscles for years, and he underdeveloped the other muscles that you need to engage to do long distance running.
And then he can't do the marathon, and somebody says, well, you're really bad at running.
Right.
But he's, a world record holder at the 100-yard dash.
See, I'm not bad at running. I'm just bad at running long distances.
Don't throw
you
something
can't even run down the hall without falling over.
So what I'm going to do is, like I said, that this one thing that I'm using to question myself is how, if I can answer that question for students, is why am I learning this and how will I ever use this? And so that's the lens that I'm using to test my own self as I'm building out my curriculum. So I have all the projects, right, that Apogee gives us, but I still I'm responsible for my core curriculum independently. As every school that's launching under Apogee, we all get to do school, quote unquote school for the core curriculum on our own.
I have a question in regards to, because this town is very sports minded, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you take the component of somebody who wants their children or the kids want to be in competitive sports? So how do you integrate that? Are you pushing them towards to club sports? Or I mean, so there is the argument that, they're missing out on the whole Friday night experience and the dances and the this and the social aspect of it. But like a lot of people, they're living vicariously through their kids, through their baseball, their football, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
So how is your school addressing that?
So that's a great question. And so we actually, I was already on this track. And again, this is synchronicity with Apogee around this emphasis on daily physical activity. So we take a different approach. Now, I feel like if anyone wants to do sports, and there is going to be this situation where I may not be able to meet everyone's needs, certainly, because it's a small program. So if you're looking for a sports scholarship and that track to college,
you want to play football, maybe it's not the thing for
my
you.
program is probably not for you.
Yep.
And that's okay. But yes, you can do the Dripping Springs Youth Association, or you can do the Y or whatever. I want people to be as active and involved as they want in sports, but I'm not going to provide that under my umbrella. But what I am going to do is that I have already partnered with Stoic Jiu-Jitsu and Second Wave CrossFit. And what we've curated together is a physical wellness program for my students. And so 2 days a week we'll be doing BJJ and 2 days a week we'll do CrossFit.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so we're going to go
Do you know
in
what
the
BJJ
day.
is?
No.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
No,
There you go.
Brazilian.
Yeah. So
Is
I know it's say it 3 times fast. And so that partnership with them is huge because part of that plan is with the CrossFit specifically. I'm working with. They actually have a guy who lives locally, works for corporate CrossFit, and he's developed a 32-week program. Which actually it was originally 16 weeks, but it was meant to be done 4 days a week. So we're just scaling it out for 32 weeks, 2 days a week, and it's an hour-long session every day that we meet for this. Between the two programs, right? So it's to be the last period of our day. And what we're going to focus on is a little bit of physiology, a little bit of nutrition, and then the actual
huge.
doing it. And here's the other part. I want to emphasize this because this is of Apogee value and just a personal value is that I believe that as parents and as people, adults standing in front of children, we should do the modeling of the thing we expect the students to do. So I'm actually going to be doing the CrossFit with them. And I told the guy, I said, I think it's really important that I do the thing I'm expecting them to do, but also I think it's actually important that I suffer and that I struggle and that the students actually see me struggle and suffer because I think
still
too
show up
often
every day and do it, yeah.
because I think adults try to have it all together and act like we got our shit together
Yeah.
and truth
Yeah.
is life's messy and I'm a mess sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to show them that, right? Like,
You know what? I think that's one of the biggest places that public school fall down is kids graduate from high school and then go on to college and they leave and they don't know how to live a healthy lifestyle. Like, what do you mean I can't eat KFC and biscuits and gravy every day, or 4 cheeseburgers on Saturday? They don't understand that you can teach them some basic skills going forward. They can use their whole life about nutrition, about exercise, about all these things that are super important. I think the fact that you're going to do that, and then see that
Yeah,
Brazilian
that's what I say.
Jiu-Jitsu,
BJJ,
yeah, I like that. That teaches them to handle themselves a little bit and understand maybe being in a dangerous position and how to react.
Yeah. So I actually asked them, I said, hey, I'm going to be doing some interviews about this. How can I talk about this on your behalf so that I sound like I know what I'm talking about? Because my kids have done BJJ, but I've never been like a representative of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I just want to share this really quick. They said that we don't live alone. How do I move around and with others? What they're going to learn is self-defense and handling confrontation without striking and creating internal confidence and not panicking. If they
That's
get
the
into
thing
a
that gets
physical
most people
thing.
in trouble. Yeah. Yeah. I see. I think that's huge. And you're not getting that in public school. Yeah. And Michelle, your presentation, your question was sort of like kids are missing out if they don't play football. But the kids are missing out if they don't do BJJ and learn how to be, some kids are made for football.
I think for us, for our movement, this small educational movement, specifically with people who are kind of have the value system that I do, similar to me, is that we're looking at mental health for teens in general. And we're just saying,
so huge
as
now.
an adult, it's so therapeutic for me to go for a walk or go for a run because the truth is we move our emotions when we move our bodies.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to be said for all the anxiety and depression and all of the stuff that's happening with our teens. Now, there's another side of it. So I don't want to just say it's because they're not active because sometimes I have to say, I think some kids are far overscheduled and we have like a busyness epidemic happening.
That's where I was kind of coming from in the sense that where these kids are in club sports, they're also on the varsity team and they have hopes to go play collegiate ball, whatever that is, or wrestling, swimming, track. And it's such a small percentage of these kids that get a full ride to a D1 school. And once they get there, they realize they hate it because they have no time for school.
It takes over everything else.
It totally takes over. But how do people find out about your school?
Oh, they can go to my website. So ApogeeDrippingSprings.com.
APOGEE.
Yep, ApogeeDrippingSprings.com. And I'm still building it out. Hopefully by the time this airs, I'll have worked out all my kinks. But I was Mission Heights Education. That website's still up.
Okay.
And so missionheightseducation.com. So they can contact me there or at ApogeeDrippingSprings.com. I do have a working email for that already is info@ ApogeeDrippingSprings.com is another place they can contact me.
And is it application based? Is it interview based? Is it merit based?
That's a great question.
How are you?
Thanks for asking that part. So there's going to be an interview portion of it, but there's there's just a kind of standard application where the parents inquire and apply. And then I want to meet with people as soon as possible to really just discuss the program and so that they fully understand like exactly what we're doing. And so that really is best done face to face. And plus I want to, show them where we're going to be and have a discussion like, does this even logistically work for you to drive to where I'm going to be? Because that's the thing with independent education is that there's no school bus picking your kids up.
Yeah.
So you got to make it work for your family logistically and time wise.
I think first day you throw them into a BJJ class and see how they do it.
How you gonna hold up?
Yeah.
Sarah, are you still running?
Yes, but not nearly as much as I was before.
Yeah, because you in your bio you talked about you started a running group. Was it in Japan?
Yeah. So when we were stationed in Japan, and there was a local running group called WOOT, Women on Okinawa Trails. But I was terrified of snakes, and I was like, I'm not going to run into a habu on the trail in Japan. So I went and met with those women.
I'm not running into
So I asked them, hey, do you mind if I create a spin-off group and we're just pavement runners? And so they said, absolutely. And we called it WOOP, Women on Okinawa Pavement.
Oh, I like that.
And we actually did like newbie runs. Like I was really into getting people just moving.
Yeah.
And so we did all kinds of short runs. The trail women, they were amazing. They did ultra running and stuff like that.
Like
so
50 and 100 mile runs.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So we were already not like in the same running club anyway. But so I actually ran my first marathon while my husband, so I was training for it while he was deployed.
Okay.
Because I thought I have got to have something that chops up my time and gets me focused on something else, right? So we'd had our first child, and I was training for this marathon. I'd started in January, and the plan was to run in December.
Okay.
Because I was coming from below zero of readiness. So I hired a trainer, the whole thing, and he comes home from deployment, and I got pregnant for our second daughter. But I decided to stick it out anyway. So I ended up running the Honolulu Marathon at 4 months pregnant, and I still ran it in 5 hours and 20 minutes.
Good for you.
So,
That's impressive.
Did she beat your time?
No.
Oh,
no, I bet he looks fast.
No.
You look fast.
Tell Michelle why you like running. She doesn't get it.
Well,
I try and tell her all the time.
because my brain works differently.
It does
than
work
yours.
differently than
my
mine.
brain works way differently.
But you got this group up to 600 members? Is that what you said?
Holy
That's amazing.
cow.
You know what? It was just the right time, right place kind of thing. Women were really seeking community at the time on that military base. And we had a lot of people there. I didn't realize this. I really was so clueless my first time to live overseas. But there were a lot of people from the U.S. living there, but working like normal job, like working, they teaching English in schools and stuff like that. So they were just like, they're not even connected to the military. And a lot of them joined our group. And so, it was a real mix between military spouses, local. We even had some local nationals that joined us.
That's awesome.
It was fun.
It's hard to have a running group that big that works. It's you got a lot of different personalities.
We did run leaders, and we just broke people up into pace groups immediately, and
That's
just
the way
like,
to do
what
it.
are you training for? And I specifically coined certain runs as the newbie runs, and just said, please, if you have no clue what you're doing, this is your run. And I would go with, I said, no one's ever left behind.
Right.
Someone will finish with you.
Yeah, that's our rule too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. This has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, Sarah, I could sit here and talk to you for hours, honestly. I mean, I had a whole bunch more questions.
Did you get to
but
all your
no,
questions?
actually, I think I covered about 4 of them. But you've been, you've given us so much knowledge here, so much information. And I know you're going to hear, people are going to reach out to you about Apogee, about your school.
Well, I think it's important also to have choices, to have to find a place for your child that works for you.
Public education is doing some things well, and in other places it's falling down, and we need to have these micro schools as an alternative.
For me, I think choice in education is paramount. And that is the testament to where we're at here in Texas, is that we are free to do many things of our own choosing. And as long as you have the ability, like I said, just to drive your kid or even carpool. Actually, we have lots of families that, like I said, for that Freedom Co-op, there were people coming from Austin, people coming from Kyle, because they wanted their child to be immersed in a group of like-minded people. And I know we're wrapping up, but I do just want to say that the thing is you can't out-influence the environment that your child is immersed in 40 hours a week.
Oh, yeah.
So when your child is into whatever community that is, right? And then they come home and you're always undermining the thing that their peer group is talking about or whatever. And they look at these teachers and their coaches, and this is the beauty and also kind of the dark side of these roles is that they are highly influential to your children.
That's a powerful statement.
And so you can't, because what will happen is children either will start hiding things from you because they don't want to hear that negative side where you're always putting down the thing that their friends are saying or whatever. Or they create this dichotomy in their personality. They're like, this is who I am at school and this is who I am at home. And so for me, I just saw that happening in Waldorf schools where there were a lot of parents aren't really, like occasionally you'd find this where parents weren't totally bought in and taking it up as a lifestyle choice for the getting immersed in the community. They were just like, I know this is a good education for my kid, but we're over here doing our own thing.
Right.
Because Waldorf is really kind of tech free. There's no computers in the schools, stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a different choice. And they really highly promote you choosing those things at home too. So that way there's an alignment between what's happening at school and happening at home. And so I just want to say with all the other things coming in public schools influencing, even in small private schools, there's a lot of, it's a niche community.
That's right.
And so anytime you let your child get immersed into that, it's very hard for you to kind of undo that influence.
They spend 8 hours a day at school and then you sit with them for 45 minutes at dinner. You can't undo what they've learned the 8 hours prior to that.
That's if people are actually having dinner
together.
If they
are, which is pretty rare these days.
I wonder how much of a bad influence I've been on you.
You have been a terrible influence on me, Michelle. I'll never be the same. Yeah. Sarah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming in, and we wish you nothing but the best with your new venture.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic.
Our pleasure.
Ready to turn your land dreams into reality? Look no further than Capital Farm Credit.
Need a loan for your perfect piece of land? Capital Farm Credit is there for you.
Their dedicated team will tailor a loan to fit your unique needs because your dreams are their priority.
Capital Farm Credit. Your land, your legacy. Visit capitalfarmcredit.com or Mark Rutledge at 512-892-4425.
Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better.
Capital Farm Credit, an equal credit housing lender.
Nomic Power Solutions, keeping you powered up.
Get to know your local full-service Generac dealer.
Cody and Dylan with Nomic Power Solutions are a veteran-owned, Texas-based Generac dealer and installer.
Offering low monthly payment options, it's never been easier to gain independence from the grid.
Call or text 512-387-4232 or visit nomicpower.com. Follow on Instagram at Nomic Power for updates.
Turnkey service including design, plumbing, electrical, and permits.
They even offer set it and forget it maintenance plans. Nomic Power Solutions.
Protect your home. Protect your family. Stay ready. Elevate your living experience with M. Elliott Studio, your trusted partner in interior design, registered and licensed by the state of Texas.
You want your home to reflect your personal style and identity. Investing in a well-crafted design doesn't just beautify your home, it enriches your life.
Team principal and owner, Montana Elliott, understands the profound impact of a thoughtfully designed space. From remodeling to full design, M. Elliott Studio is the first step to unlocking your style.
Turn your aspirations into reality. Tailored to your taste and desires, M. Elliott Studio will work to create an environment that embraces your style with style.
Your space, their expertise.
melliotstudio.com 512-781-0224.
This show has been brought to you in part by the real estate pros at the Mallet Integrity Team. When you're looking to buy or sell, you need them on your side. Why settle for less when you can have real estate done right? Give them a call at 512-829-2062 or get more info at malletintegrityteam.com.
You know you like us, so go now to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a review. Why don't ya? We love your feedback and comments. Email us at malletandmichelle@gmail.com.
Thanks for putting up with us.